Okay, next up we're going to solve some word problems involving triangles. Now let me warn you about something. I've given you an extra part on the end of each of these. So there's kind of two parts to each of these problems. Number one says triangle ABC has angles in the ratio of 3 to 4 to 5. Anytime you have ratios, we always put 3x, 4x, 5x. You put those x's in it. So therefore you have a triangle that has these three angles. Now what you know about the angles in a triangle is anytime you take the three angles inside of a triangle, you add them together, you will always get 180. There's your equation. Combine to solve the equation. That's going to be 12x equals 180. Last step, we always divide by the 12, and that gives me an x value of 15. Once you find the x value, you will always plug it back in. 3 times 15 is 45. 4 times 15 is 60. 5 times 15 is 75. And please check that and make sure, and it does add up to 180. Now, let me go ahead and draw that triangle because, again, on each of these problems, I'm going to give you a kind of a B part. So what I've given here is another part to this. Let's draw this triangle. And I'm not drawing it to scale. I'm just drawing me a triangle so I can put 45, 75, and 60 inside of it. And again, that is the measures of A, B, and C. I'm going to put it in the order that it was in. Triangle ABC, 3 to 4 to 5. So that'd be, again, the 45, 60, and 75. It says if side AB is 4 centimeters long, it asks for the length of the other two sides. Now, again, the rest of this is old material. This goes back to previous scales. So the way we solve this would be a law of sines. I'm going to go ahead and put my x value there. And just to remind you, the law of sine says the sine of 75 over the side across from it is equal to the sine of 45 over the side across from it. To solve law of sines, we're simply going to take these two. This is a proportion now. We're going to multiply these two and then divide by the third. So we're going to do 4 times the sine of 45 divided by the sine of 75. And once you do that, you're going to get an x value of about 2.93. So let me erase this, and I'm going to put 2.93 for that side. Now to find that third missing side, I'm going to let it be, and you can use any letter you want to. I'm just going to use y. So again, we know the sine of 75. I'm going to start out the same way. The sine of 75 over 4 equals the sine of 60 over y. Again, I use this side again, but now that I'm finding y, I use the 60 degrees. We do the same thing. I'm going to multiply 4 times the sine of 60. I'm going to divide that answer by sine of 75, and that gives me a y value of 3.59. So that gives me all the three sides for the B part. Okay, this one says in triangle PQR, PQ is 3x plus 2, QR is 2x minus 1, PR is 4x minus 3. The triangle is isosceles. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to sketch me out an isosceles triangle here. It also tells me that in this isosceles triangle that PQ and PR are the sides that are congruent. It tells me that PQ is 3x plus 2 and PR is 4x minus 3. So my equation, what I would do, since those are the two sides that are congruent, then I know that 4x minus 3 and 3x plus 2 have to be the same size. They have to be equal. So, and let's go ahead and label this so I don't get lost. 4x minus 3 is PR. I put that on the wrong side. That's supposed to be 4x minus 3 here. PQ has a value of 3x plus 2. And then the bottom down here, the QR is 2x minus 1. Again, we know it's isosceles. The sides are the same. Let's solve the equation. I'm going to move my 3x to the left by subtracting. I'm going to move my minus 3 to the right by adding, and that gives me x has a value of 5. So now what I would do, again, is go back and plug in 5 for all the x values. Since this x is 5, that's 4 times 5 minus 3, which gives me a value of 17. 3 times 5 plus 2 gives me a value of 17, which works out. That's right. Now, the bottom doesn't necessarily have to be equal. 2 times 5 minus 1 actually gives me a value of 9. There's your three side lengths, and that's the first part of the question. Then the next part of the question says, what's all the angle measures? So a couple ways we can work this. We could use the law of cosines. but here's how I want to do it. Let's actually take and draw this. I feel like this is the easiest way. Draw this line of symmetry. That's going to split the bottom into 4.5 and 4.5. It cuts that 9 in half. Now, in order to find this angle, all I've got to do is, I know that the adjacent side, this is a right triangle. I know the adjacent side is the 4.5. I know the hypotenuse is 17, and I don't have the opposite side. That's the height there. So since I have adjacent hypotenuse, then I know that cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So I can say the cosine of that angle I'm looking for, and that's theta, that's just an unknown, is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. In order to solve this, to figure out what the angle is, move cosine over by doing inverse cosine. And that gives me an angle value of 74.7 degrees for Q. Since it has symmetry, that gives me an angle value for R of 74.7 degrees also. The three angles have to add up to 180. So therefore, if this is 74.7 and so is that one, in order to add up to 180, we're going to add those two together, subtract it from 180, and that's going to give me a measure of angle P, which is 30.7 degrees. Now again, if you'd rather work it this way, you could have also used law of cosines. Just showing you that you can set it up and let the 17 is 17 and the 9 be the three sides. And you really don't, it doesn't matter which angle you find first. If you want to find angle P first, that's going to be the side across from it's the 9. So you're going to do 9 squared equals 17 squared plus 17 squared minus 2 times 17 times the cosine of angle P, which is across from that side that you used over here. Solve that equation, and you will get that exact same P is equal to 30.7 degrees. Next problem. The two shorter sides of a right triangle are x plus 1 and 2x minus 3. So let's draw us a right triangle. And we know the two legs, the shorter sides, are x plus 1 and 2x minus 3. Hypotenuse is 13. The relationship we have between the legs and the hypotenuse, the three sides of a right triangle, are a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. It's the Pythagorean theorem. Now, be cautious. You're not talking about angles here. The three angles, yes, have to add up to 180. These are not angles. These are sides. So this is one of the harder problems we'll do. X plus 1 squared. How do you square that? To square something, you multiply it times itself. We've got to do x plus 1 times x plus 1. We've got to distribute. We have to FOIL a binomial. Here's how you do it. X times x, x squared. X times 1, x. 1 times x is also x, and 1 times 1 is 1. The middle terms should be alike. So when you do x plus 1 squared, it gives you a total of x squared plus 1x plus 1x is a total of 2x plus 1. Then you've got to do the exact same thing for 2x minus 3 squared. That's going to be 2x minus 3 times itself. 2x times 2x, multiply, combine the things that are alike. 4 is 2 times 2. X times x is x squared. 2x times negative 3, again, just combine the things that are alike. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Leave the x alone. Negative 3 times 2x is the exact same thing. And then negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. So your second, your b squared, is actually 4x squared. These middle terms combined, that's going to be minus 12x, and then plus 9. Let me erase to make us some more room. And that's going to equal 13 squared, which is 169. We have a quadratic equation. What quadratic equations are is anytime you have x squared stuff. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to combine all of our like terms, like always. X squared and 4x squared gives you 5x squared. The positive 2x and negative 12x combine to give you negative 10x. The 1, the 9, and the 169. Now, we're going to move the 169 over here by subtracting, and that's going to give me a negative 159. So you have, again, what's called a quadratic equation. In order to solve quadratic equations, I want you to use my formula. Let's do it here. Left leg, right leg, head. Left leg is opposite half of that middle number. Multiply that times itself, gives you 25. Multiply 5 and 159 negative, and that's going to give you a negative, let's see, that's 750 and 45, that's 795. So taking those numbers, my final answer for x is going to be x equals left leg plus and minus the square root of these two values subtracted, 25 minus negative 795. That's going to give you a value of 820, and it's all divided by this number, which is 5. Now, that's a funny looking answer, so let's go a step further. Let's actually find out what that value is. So the square root of 820, you can type that in your calculator first if you'd like to, but the square root of 820 is about 28.64. So what I'm going to do, my first answer is going to be 5 plus that number, which is going to be 33.64, all divided by 5. Or my second answer is going to be 5 minus that number, which is negative 23.64, again, all divided by 5. Now, before we go any further, a negative x value, when I plug that in, a negative x value, like it's going to be like negative 4 point something, we can throw that out because if I add 1 to that leaves a value still that's negative. And this side length can't be a negative value, so we can throw that away. So my only answer is going to be 33.64 divided by 5, which is about 6.73. Now let's check that. Let me erase some of this. So when I plug in 6.73 here, I get 6.73 plus 1, which is about 7.73. When I plug it in here, 6.73 times 2, and I subtract 3 from it, that's going to give me somewhere around 10.46. And the way that you would check that, you should be able to take a squared plus b squared, and it should equal c squared. And let me check that real quick. You get 109.41 plus 59, can't write it, point around 75, and that equals c squared to be 169. If you were to actually add those together, you get somewhere around 169.1. So that's so close because we actually rounded these, so that is the correct answer. All right, the last one of these. In right triangle ABC, the measure angle A and the measure angle B are the acute angles in this. So let me draw the right triangle. And then A and B, it says, are the acute angles. So C would be the right angle. It says the measure of angle B is 12 degrees more than the double of angle A. And we don't know what angle A is, so we're going to let that be our X. So angle B is going to be double it and then 12 more than that. The measure of angle C is the right angle. Before we go any further, we already have a relationship here. We know the three angles in a triangle add up to 180. We also know that these two angles, since we have a 90-degree angle here, that the angles 2x plus 12 and x have to add up to 90, the other 90. Combine like terms, that's going to be 3x. Move the 12 to the other side by subtracting. That's going to be 78. So it gives me an x value of, when I divide, of 26. So therefore, this x value right here is 26 degrees. If you were to do 2 times 26 and then add 12 to it, you actually get, I believe that would be 64 degrees. So there's your answers. However, like with the other problems, we go a step further, and I just give you something else to do to review old stuff. Find the measure, or find the three side lengths if the hypotenuse is 8. The way we're going to use that, or the way we're going to do this, is by using, in review, basic SOHCAHTOA. So if I'm looking for, let's call it, I tell you what, let's call it side O. Because if I use 26 degrees, this is the opposite, and the hypotenuse would be H. So sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. So I know the sine of my 26-degree angle is going to equal opposite, which we don't know, and you can put the O there if you want to, over hypotenuse, which is 8. To solve this equation, get rid of x by itself, to get rid of this divided by 8, we're simply going to multiply by 8. So we type into our calculator 8 times sine of 26, and we get a value of about 3.51. In order to find, I'm going to call it side A for adjacent. If I use this 26-degree angle, I know the cosine of an angle is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. So we can do the cosine of 26 equals adjacent over hypotenuse. And I'm just using x for my unknown. To solve that, I'm going to move the 8 over by multiplying. So 8 times cosine of 26 gives me a value of about 7.19. So therefore, that's this missing side here, 7.19. So that's all three sides and all three angles.